It's not talking about the preservation. It's not talking about maintaining, but the question is how to implement it, how to act upon it so that we can really see, not for ourselves, for the coming generation. Indian diaspora is a diversified community. There are two things which unite them. A, the feeling that they are Indian and Indianness. And the second thing is, which is a diversified form, they have gone to Trinidad, they have gone to Mauritius, they have gone to many places. And they have added Trinidadian Indian, Mauritian Indian, Fiji Indian. So these two things have to be protected. Whatever they took during the migration, they took the symbols. And these symbols were expressed in terms of oral traditions and in terms of practical things which they learned at their houses, which would be the worship, rituals, festivals, norms and values which were a part of that. The question here arises, what we can do, what we are, how we can save it. These are the questions which I think we all have got. There's one thing we see is once we live in the Western society, once we live in any other country, when we talk about our identity, identity itself is a very, very fluid concept. That means your identity is not one identity or many identities, and they make you one whole, one unit, by which you can say, I am this person. I belong to this community. Person, individual, cannot think in terms of preserving the community identity. Community identity can only be preserved when all the people work together. That means you have to have communication. That means you have to have some sort of interrelation. And then not only intercontinental relations, but also intra-relations within your own community. I am giving you this idea, then I come back. I think I have a few minutes. I have been looking at another type of diaspora. I am not talking about the Armenian diaspora, the Jewish diaspora, the Chinese diaspora. I am talking about a diaspora which has been in past the Indian diaspora. If you remember, or if you know from the historical point of view, right from the 811 until, let's say, the Aurangzeb, 1607, there have been big number of Indians who migrated to Central Asia. Now they have been invaded. There are two types of Indians. One, they were taken to the Kabul market, another market, and they sold like slaves. And the others were the traders who went there and earned money for India. These two types of groups, in which there were two very important communities, Bhatiyas and Aroras from Multan and Shikarpur. They were the people, even the Marwadis. They were the Bohras and Ojhas. And even from Allahabad and UP and Bihar, people went there. Now, whatever they did, the basic idea was in which way we could preserve our heritage. And I think the same thing, our forefathers in Suriname, Trinidad and Mauritius done the same thing. They started first the so-called popular religious practices. And then these practices were translated in form of symbols, the concrete symbols like temples, etc. and etc. So that their generation can see what are the symbols which are the part of their heritage and in which way they can preserve it. My earlier experience or my earlier example of Central Asia gives only one idea that those Indians who went to Central Asia, at least two very important temples have been known to us. Astrakhan in Dagestan, it was one of the biggest temples where people used to go. The second was near Baku, 25 kilometers, Delhi.Jan, where 60 people used to live. There is a Gurmukhi, I have been there, there is a Gurmukhi plague, Hindi plague, Sanskrit plague. They became the symbols for the coming generations. The worst is that at a certain time, becoming isolated, they could not keep contact with India. And their cultural heritage became a part of the museum for the onlookers. They were completely absorbed in the society, they lost their languages, and they could not think in which way we could preserve our culture. I think this is one example. This example we have to take now with the NRI and PIU situation. As I told to you, the symbols are very, very important. Symbols could be a language, symbols could be a script, symbols could be the way of behaving, symbols could be a characteristic of a person. How to preserve them so that we can be proud that these symbols are ours. I'm not talking about the overt symbols, but there are also latent symbols. As I said to you, there are two ways to do it. First of all, the oral traditions in terms of folklore, in terms of folk songs, in terms of the ways the people are doing, like in Caribbean, a lot of records have been produced. One can keep them because they are also part of symbols. Secondly, perhaps there is a time now we should try to interview the elderly population, their experiences, and I think these experiences can be used, translated and kept as a part of the cultural heritage. The other thing is in the form of this globalization of Indianness to create the music. Today we were talking of creating